I think I should take questions now. No, yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, can you point out you and I never talked about that, the conflict right now between the Sunni and the Shia in the Middle East
Yeah.
really only represent a minority of the Muslims in the world. You got 1.2 billion.
Yes, sure, certainly, yeah. It is not.
How will that affect Malaysia and the other bigger Muslim populations?
Well, there are recruits from those far Islamic nations, but it's kind of polarizing people, especially now they see that the Iranian army is helping in taking Tikrit, and Iranian experts on the ground and Iranian Air Force, etc. So they see the struggle as a Shiite Sunni. So I'm afraid that more polarization would happen, and the divide will get deeper and deeper, you see. And so the call for jihad ring really sweet in the ears of many Muslims, okay? And the caliphate that was declared, so-called caliphate, is a dream come true to many extremist Muslims. So, and there is a statement by Muhammad, if there is a caliph who appears and you do not really pay homage to him, you live in sin and die in sin, kind of, So many extremist Muslims are flocking there to Syria and Iraq because they see this as a bulwark of the Sunni fight against the Shiites, really. But they're still a minority, as you said, because, ISIS is, they say, between 20,000 and 30,000 fighters, okay? But we should know that they rule over 7 million people, you see? And those people in northern Syria and Iraq, they felt that there's nobody to claim their rights, okay? And they found themselves in the lap of the ISIS. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Could you put into perspective, just kind of, you touched on it, but when you watch the television and something happens and they'll be, Muslims are very peaceable, loving people, and yet you have the Shia law. So where does all this violence, why do you see on the one hand news stories and interviews and, a Muslim is really naturally a good neighbor and a loving person and caring person, and then you have this bloodthirsty behavior. Is that the Shia law, or where does all that come from?
It goes back to the first question I asked, who speaks for Islam? Okay? Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, speaks for Islam. There are Muslims who ignore Sharia law. They don't want really to implement. Islam is church and state. It's not like Christianity separated, So many Muslims come for the American dream, want to live in peace, But some Muslims, are activists and come to establish an Islamic community. The problem, I believe, that I agree that, a moderate Muslim is a non-practicing Muslim sometimes, if I can say, But the problem is that we are not doing enough to attract them, to integrate them in our communities. We don't show love and compassion towards them, and not only Muslims, people of different, color and ethnicity. I have my friend here, Sam. He's been here 40 years. He doesn't have one American friend. White American friend. So this is really kind of an example. My son, when he came to this country, he's now in Dubai, he said this is a social desert. Okay? As I said in the sermon, individualism and, our love of personal freedom, they have really kind of made us live in a cocoon. Yes, Doug, you want to ask something?
Two observations. First of all, it almost seems like the ISIS and people and so forth are kind of going back to the early days of Islam when they did convert through killing. That shouldn't be the case now. But the bigger question I don't even know the answer. Take Malaysia, which is the largest Muslim country in the world.
Yeah.
Are they Sunni or Shia?
Sunni.
They're Sunni.
Yeah.
So if ISIS prevails and they set a caliphate there in Syria and Iraq, would the Malaysians or the majority people then recognize them?
No. They see them as, something fossilized from the past, I believe.
So they're still going to be fragmented.
Yeah, they're still, because there was, I mean, central government in the history of Islam did not last long, you see, and the Islamic world was fragmented forever, kind of, you know. Muslims have tried this Sharia law for 1400 years and they couldn't make it, you know. They'll not be able to make it today. You know, we have to be realistic and practical. Many Muslims, Saudis, Malaysians, Indonesians, well, they want to live in their nation states and don't want to be part of this. Only the extremist elements, you know, see in that, you know, and those who feel they are looking for an identity and belongingness, okay? This is why I would like to touch a little bit on the Paris attacks, okay? I'll do it in 10 minutes or less, okay? In 2004, before I left Lebanon, I interviewed the advisor to the Prime Minister of Hamas, who lived 18 years in the States. And Ahmed Yusuf lived in Virginia 18 years. He led a think tank center, and he wrote a book. And I asked him, in this book you talk about integration. Can Muslims integrate? I'm talking about devout extremist Muslims, okay? He said, no, we cannot. We can acculturate. We can live side by side, but we cannot integrate because their moral values are different. Their worldview is different. I'm sure that, you know, till now, I myself, you know, I don't accept the issue of gay marriage and other issues, you know, and, you know, so they are very strict about that. And you know that ISIS throw gay people from the highest tower in town, right? So, integration is out of the question, and there are in France there is more problems between Muslims and other French residents because the French are leading, you know, the way in secularism. They call it laïcité, and this secularism doesn't work because laïcité is like the legacy and history of the French Revolution. Okay, so and in this, you know, slide, you see that the women are demonstrating against the headscarf ban. Okay, it says law against the veil is a law against Islam. You see, so there is both a religious struggle, which is between secularism and religiosity of the Islamic community, as well as also racial struggle too, you know. So and I'll come to that. So as George Orwell said in his Animal Farm, you wake up, find that some animals are more equal than animals. Also in France, there are some French who are more equal than other French. Okay, an author called Amin Maalouf, he lived in he's been living in France since 1976, Lebanese French. He wrote a book. This book is a short book. I recommend to those who want to understand the racial and difficult problem between Islamism and other French citizens in the name of identity. Actually, the real title in French was Mortal Identities, L'identité mortière. So he's saying that the Algerian or the French of an Algerian descent, even second generation, are born there. They speak French perfect, like any French citizen. But they try to be French, they don't let them. They try to be Arab. They are not Arab. They find themselves, you know, out of place, like the Kawashi brothers. One of them did physical education and looked for a job for 5 years. In the end, he found only delivering pizza as the only work they would accept him to do. So these are, you know, things that happen in France, and they are living in ghettos. There is no integration. There is no. They don't accept them as full citizens, full rights. Really, somebody may say they don't want to. Some of them don't want to. Some do want to. Really, a French author. This was written in December before the attacks. Really, I was reading a review of his book. I don't like to read French a lot. So I read a review, and he said that in 2030 France will become Islamic because the French, if they get married, they get a kid and a dog, while the Muslims get 10 kids, So in the end, the French Muslims will overcome, and he titled his book Soumission, which means submission. So France will become like this. Okay. Yeah, any other question? Yeah, covered it. Okay, yes.
Would you clarify again the relationship with Al Qaeda and ISIS?
Yeah, Az-Zarqawi was in 2004. Az-Zarqawi rose to power in Iraq, and he founded Al Qaeda in Iraq, and it says between Al Qaeda in Iraq. But he was so extremist and brutal, okay, especially because he spent time in prisons a lot, and he had a following, okay. So the Sahwa, the Sunni tribes fought against Zarqawi and his followers, really, and gained ground, really, supported by Washington and CIA, who gave millions of dollars, really, I mean, Al Qaeda went down. But later, with the rise of the Shiite government and the injustice that was witnessed by Sunni Muslims, that was dealt to Sunni Muslims, those who were Al Qaeda started to gain popularity, and were joined by remnants of the Saddam Hussein army, and Izzat ad-Duri, one of Saddam's, generals, is leading one of the, provinces there with ISIS. You see, so ISIS really got together from the remnants of Al Qaeda and also local recruits in Syria, and as well as foreign recruits. Okay, which the foreign recruits around 3,000. Sorry. Yeah, blended. The Al-Qaeda only in Iraq and Syria. Al-Qaeda doesn't think that they should be limited to a land. This is the difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So ISIS split from Al-Qaeda now. And ISIS is condemned by Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda is trying really to raise its head, like the attacks in France were done by Al-Qaeda, not by ISIS, you see, to show that we are here, we can lead again, So, so this is why kind of ISIS is pinned down to a land. And this is against Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda think they want really to do things all over the world, yes.
The land thing is interesting. Did you see the Atlantic article?
Yes, I have a copy at my table. If you'd like to take it,
Yeah.
go ahead. The Atlantic article is a good one to explain, yeah. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I printed out 2 days ago for you if you want to take it, yeah.
I was wondering if you could clarify the land thing, because he makes that point that true Islam can only, or at least in this interpretation, can only be established with a caliphate.
Yes, right.
That a caliphate has to have land,
Yeah,
but a land
right.
without boundaries. So how
Yeah.
do other Muslims, what do they do with that? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, how explicit is that teaching?
Other Muslims are practical. If I lose oil, if I recognize ISIS, I'll not recognize ISIS, right? If I lose my wealth, if I lose my land, okay, and if I lose my freedom, so I mean, they are human beings, not robots, you see. So, as I said, Muslims ignored Sharia law forever. The question here, why the caliphate is attractive, is that revelation stopped, but a caliph could really interpret Islam in a new way, if I can say. However, the Shiites are ahead of the Sunnis in this. They believe that the Imam could receive revelations from Allah. You see? I mean, not exactly like the revelations of prophets, but inspiration that's above the level of human beings. So the Shiites believe that the message of Muhammad can go forward because the Imam is divine and infallible, like the Pope. While Sunnis believe that the Caliph could really, handle Sharia law the way it suits the nation. For example, if it suits the nation to behead all the Yazidis, okay, let's do it. All right, for example. By the way, you want really to be also fair and say that the Muslims who came from Arabia, out of Arabia, they were many Monophysites, Christians cooperated with them, okay, because the Christians in the Middle East were persecuted by Byzantium, by both really, by Constantinople and Rome. So they saw in the Arabs as a neutral, element. So they collaborated with them and really gave them information to topple the Byzantines, you see. And then the Arabs did really impose al-jizya, which is a poll tax, but they did not impose Islam. They did not force people to turn to Islam. Actually, one of the generals who was called the Sword of Allah, Khalid al-Walid, when he reached Homs, which is in northern Syria, some group of people converted from Christianity to Islam, and he had to flog them to convert back, to revoke Islam, because he wanted the money. He didn't want them to, I mean, we need money to go on, So the extremist Muslims are enamored by an ideology that was not exactly there, you see. So they project the past on the present, but they make a lot of mistakes. So a caliph is attractive, as I said, because the Sharia law is very complicated. Is smoking okay or not? Is profit in banks, interest, okay or not? Muslims are still debating about this, and they cannot really, because there was no smoking in the days of Muhammad, there was no banks in the days of Muhammad, you see. So a caliph could say, no, I say, what? And if that's it, because because Islam doesn't have really recognized clerics like Christianity. Okay, so any Muslim, if they have enough knowledge, they say, well, the Muslim cleric is wrong, I don't want to follow him. Yes, sir.
So in your eyes, how you view this religious war, do you think that there's going to be peace and is there being resolved it, or is this going to be another 1,000-year war?
Not a 1,000 years war, but they'll not be able to resolve it, but they will be able to kind of downsize ISIS, and unless they really find a political solution, they'll not be able to find a permanent solution for ISIS. As long as you don't have a solution for the Kurds, the Sunnis in Iraq and Syria, and the Alawites who are really, bombing civilians. Imagine if the White House would send F-16s and 15s and bomb you. This is what Damascus is doing, So there need to be a political solution, and I think we will not be able to intervene between them. And we have really sometimes to support the winning horse, even though it's not morally right, but I'm saying that we have to kind of try to do justice and sometimes stay out of it to a limit, And there is also the issue of Israel, okay? I think Israel can defend herself, you see. Israel is the strongest, nation in the Middle East, you see. They can defend themselves. And you saw Netanyahu, the prime minister, They can defend themselves, I believe. And but we have to be realistic and not really go into... I think the solution in the long run is to find an alternative source of energy other than oil, because as long as we buy oil, it supports terrorism. Even the president, Syrian president, is buying oil from ISIS through mediators. So it's fueling the terrorism again and again. And the Saudis peddle their extremist view, Salafi, which is really rigid, of Islam, okay, all over the world, because they want to divert the wrath of their people out, okay. So a historian called Bernard Lewis said, imagine if the KKK would control the revenues of oil in Texas and peddle their version of Christianity, And this is what, the extremist elements among the Saudis are doing.
So it is about oil.
More or less, but oil really fuels...
As long as we need oil.
We could, diffuse the situation if we can find another source of energy, Yes, ma'am.
If the Saudis are, quote unquote, our allies,
Yeah,
and they're Sunni,
yeah.
and ISIS is being funded by the Sunnis, I mean, like, what's that relationship?
Yeah.
It sounds...
Yeah. ISIS is not funded by the regime in Saudi Arabia, by the extremist princes and maybe some wealthy elements in Saudi Arabia, you see, and also the Gulf states. Now, Saudi Arabia is trying to fight the regime, I mean, the Emirates, etc. So there's a schizophrenia here, the problem, you see. Like, I was reading an article about the women driving in Saudi Arabia, okay? Well, women drive in secret in Saudi Arabia, okay, but they cannot really get a driver's license. If caught, they'll be punished, in a way or another, or let go, But the issue, he's not sure. He lived in Saudi Arabia. But one of the guys said, she is really a lady who was educated here. She said, the regime is liberal, they want really us to go forward, but the majority of people are still rigid and they want to keep the old patriarchal ways. So actually the common people are the Saudi prince's regime, and the government is really progressive, and they want really to modernize. But the common people, they say this is the cradle of Islam, and we have to, keep, the same thing forever, Yeah, so...
the regime has to keep pace with the people.
Yeah, right. Both. Play it both, yeah. Yes.
I lived in Saudi for 8 years,
Yeah.
so I'm sort of pro-Saudi, if you will. When I first came to Saudi Arabia in the middle 70s, it was very impressive, if you want to call it that, as far as women are concerned.
Yeah.
And I think along the lines of what Hicham is saying, they now have women's education.
Yeah.
Women will probably get the vote there fairly soon. I heard a great interview on television where the interviewer was grilling the Saudi ambassador to the United States, and he said, when are you going to, in a progressive society, when are you going to give women the vote? And he said, probably fairly soon, 5 to 10 years at the most. And then he hit back with, and that'll mean that we will have given the women the vote within 60 years of becoming a country.
Yeah.
How long did it take the United States to give the women the vote?
Yeah, but he's talking about, Doug, about local councils, not really like, suffrage like we know it in the West. So the municipalities and stuff. Yes, sir, you have a question.
I was going to say, what do you say to those people who say the West just needs to stay out of this because it's an internal religious war that we can't do anything about?
The problem, we cannot stay out of it completely because, our interests will really kind of be jeopardized. We need to be in a way or another, but we need to be wise, not and call a spade a spade. We need to push them towards some. I don't believe in Islamic reform. Reform means going back to the old ways. This is the problem. Reform in Christianity means, like Luther did, separate church from state. But for them, reform means going back. But we need to secularize, maybe, and encourage human rights. If you are born in Syria, you know how much poor most of the people there. I mean, the wealth is in the hand of 10% of the people, and the other people cannot get health care, cannot get a decent education, cannot get a future. Their dream is to go across the border to Lebanon and work in construction. That's it, So, I mean, if you have no future and you find an organization like ISIS or Hezbollah around the corner, you just join, So we need to foster democracy, human rights, freedom, which is difficult. As I said, the legacy is not there really, and we need to do something about that. This is why, I believe it should be, we can't keep out of it. I know there are no really good answers for this. Otherwise Obama will ask me to come to the White House, I believe, right? All right, no problem, yeah. I'm sure he won't, really. Yeah. Last question, and thank you very much. Last question. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.